The wind howled across the desert range as 5 of the Navy's best SEAL snipers knelt behind their rifles, yet every shot kept missing the target by inches. The commander's jaw tightened. This was their final test before deployment, and failure wasn't an option. The men readjusted, recalibrated, and re-aimed, but the shot still swung wide. Frustration burned in their eyes. Then, the base siren echoed and every man turned around. A woman, small, calm, and carrying an old, scratched rifle, walked across the sand as if she owned the wind itself. No introduction. No salute. Just a quiet confidence that made the entire firing line freeze. "Who is she?" one SEAL whispered. The commander only said 5 words that silenced the entire camp. "She's the one who trained us." And what happened next became a lesson none of them would ever forget. Dust rose like smoke as the shots cracked again and again across the desert training range. It was supposed to be a simple requirement: hit a tiny steel target resting over 1,300 yards away. For most teams, it was nearly impossible. For SEAL Team 9, it was routine, at least, it used to be. But today? Every bullet curved away. Every shot felt cursed. Every man felt the weight of failure creeping over his shoulders. Chief Warrant Officer Blake "Bear" Harlan slammed his fist into the dirt beside him. "What's wrong with us? We've hit tougher targets blindfolded." Beside him, Ortiz, the youngest sniper, kept adjusting his scope, whispering calculations under his breath. Sweat beaded down his forehead, not from the heat, but from the pressure. "This wind isn't normal," Ortiz muttered. "It's shifting every 4 seconds." Blake shook his head. "Wind is wind. We've handled worse." Their commander, Captain Rhodes, watched in silence. No yelling, no anger, just disappointment that carved deeper than any scream. "If we can't hit a still plate," Rhodes finally said, "how will we protect the operators counting on us out there?" Silence fell like a stone. The men felt it, the mission approaching, the stakes rising, the fear of being the ones who fail when it matters. Snipers don't get second chances. One shot can save a life or end one. The next hour was a cycle of recalculation, resetting rifles, checking ballistic charts, and adjusting breathing techniques. Yet the bullets kept missing by mere inches. Inches that could mean death in the field. Blake finally whispered, "We're doing everything right, so why does it feel like everything is wrong?" Rhodes looked toward the horizon and took a slow breath. "I was hoping we wouldn't need her," he said quietly. "But we do." Before the team could ask who "her" was, Rhodes pressed his radio. "Bring her in." And just like that, the next chapter of their lives began. The base siren echoed once, a long, low wail. The SEALs straightened, confused. Visitors were rare. Visitors announced by sirens were almost unheard of. A Humvee rolled across the sand, stopping 30 feet from the range. The door opened slowly, and out stepped a woman, mid-30s, hair tied back in a no-nonsense braid, sunburned cheekbones, and a rifle older than every weapon on the field. Blake squinted. Ortiz blinked. Every man exchanged a look that silently asked, "Who in the world is she?" She moved like someone who didn't need permission to exist. Calm steps. Sharp eyes. The kind of presence that didn't need to be loud to be powerful. She examined the range with one glance, assessing wind, heat shimmer, and terrain as if the earth itself whispered secrets to her. Captain Rhodes stepped forward. "Gentlemen," he said, "meet Sergeant Liana Cross." Blake scoffed under his breath. "We're bringing in an army sniper." But Rhodes heard him. "She's not just an army sniper," he said sharply. "She's the sniper who rewrote half the manuals you learned from. Including wind-reading techniques." Ortiz's eyes widened. "Wait, the cross method? That cross?" Liana simply nodded, as if being legendary was a mild inconvenience. She walked past them and knelt beside Ortiz's rifle, studying it without touching. "You're overcompensating for the gusts," she said softly. "The wind's not random. It's breathing. Breathing? Blake muttered. She looked up at him, her eyes sharp as glass. Wind is alive. If you treat it like a threat, you'll lose. But if you treat it like a partner, it'll guide the bullet home. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight that pressed into each man, reshaping their confidence and their doubt. She stood up, shouldered her battered rifle, and lay prone on the ground. No wind meter. No ballistic calculator. No rangefinder. Just her breath. Just her heartbeat. A single shot cracked. Not even a second later. Ping. The bullet struck the steel target dead center, a perfect hit. The snipers froze. Blake whispered, "How?" Liana rolled onto her side, her expression completely calm. "Now," she said, "who wants me to teach them how to listen to the wind?" The team, humbled and shaken, gathered around her like beginners on their first day. But Liana didn't smile. Because she knew something the men didn't. Teaching them to hit the target wasn't the real battle. Teaching them to trust themselves again, that was the war she had come to fight. The sun began lowering, turning the desert gold as Liana Cross led the SEAL snipers to a part of the range they rarely used anymore, an uneven stretch of sand with unpredictable winds. Blake frowned as he looked around. "This place is a nightmare for shooters," he muttered. "That's why we're here," Liana replied. "If you can shoot in hell, you can shoot anywhere." She knelt, scooping a small handful of sand and letting it drift through her fingers. The grains danced differently with each direction the wind whispered. The SEALs watched carefully, but Liana wasn't looking at the sand. She was studying the air itself. "Wind doesn't hit you randomly," she said. "It shifts from layers, ground winds, mid-winds, high winds. You're only reading one of them." Ortiz frowned. "But wind meters won't save you," Liana cut in. "Technology fails. Nature doesn't." She motioned for them to kneel. The SEAL snipers, elite men used to being the best, followed her like students learning fire for the first time. "Touch the ground," she said softly. They did. "Now close your eyes. Listen." At first, Blake felt ridiculous. Listening to wind? He had years of combat behind him, medals pinned on his uniform, and yet here he was kneeling like a beginner. But slowly, the world around him shifted. The wind wasn't noise anymore, it had rhythm. A push. A pull. A change. A breath. Ortiz whispered, "It really does shift in layers." Liana nodded without opening her eyes. "Now open them. Look at the mirage." The heat shimmer danced across the horizon. Blake had never noticed how it tilted, slightly right, then gently left. As if the air itself was pointing toward the target. Liana aimed her old rifle. "This isn't about hitting a target," she said. "This is about reading what others ignore." Another single shot cracked. Again. Ping. Another perfect center hit. Blake exhaled hard. Ortiz felt goosebumps rise on his arms. The team stood in silence, stunned. Liana stood, dusting off her pants. "Your problem isn't skill," she said. "It's fear. You started missing, so you stopped trusting yourselves. Fear pulls the trigger before you do. And that's the deadliest enemy on any battlefield." Her words landed like bullets straight into their pride, but also into their hearts. Because every man there knew she was right. The following days were a war none of the SEALs expected. Liana broke down everything they thought they knew, breathing techniques, trigger pressure, wind calls, even shooting posture. Blake found himself shaking with exhaustion after hours of holding positions that felt impossible. Ortiz struggled with frustration when Liana erased the ballistic charts he loved so much. "This isn't punishment," she reminded them. "It's refinement. I'm removing everything that limits you." The men grumbled. They cursed under their breath. They questioned themselves. They questioned her. But they kept trying. Each morning began before sunrise. Liana stood in the sand already waiting, as if she never slept. She had a way of speaking quietly yet commanding more respect than any shout could ever earn. "Your rifle is an extension of you," she said one day, walking behind Ortiz as he adjusted his scope for the 20th time. "If you hesitate, it hesitates. If you doubt, it doubts." Ortiz took a breath and fired. The bullet missed, barely. Liana placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not aiming wrong," she said. "You're thinking wrong." Across the range, Blake kept firing with growing frustration. His bullets landed close but never perfect. Sweat dripped from his brow, his jaw tight. Liana approached him silently. "You're trying to force the bullet," she said. "Stop fighting the wind. Ride it." "Ride it?" Blake snapped. "It's throwing my shots wide." Liana stepped beside him, lifted her rifle, and fired without adjusting her stance. Ping! Center hit. She lowered the rifle and handed it to Blake. "You're stronger than the wind," she said. "But the wind doesn't care about strength. It cares about patience." Her eyes softened, a rare glimpse of gentleness behind her steel exterior. "And patience," she added, "is something no sniper survives without." The days were brutal, but a shift began to take root. The SEAL snipers slowly forgot their frustration and remembered why they started shooting in the first place: precision, honor, discipline, the quiet pride of hitting the impossible. Every night after training, the men ate together, tired, dusty, humbled. And Liana often sat alone, staring into the distance, lost in thoughts no one dared to ask about. But one night, Ortiz found the courage. "Ma'am, why did you leave the army?" Liana paused. Her voice, when it came, was soft. "Because the last shot I took," she said, "saved the wrong person." Silence fell. No one asked more. But every man understood. She wasn't just teaching them shooting. She was teaching them redemption. 4 days later, Captain Rhodes stood at the edge of the range with a clipboard in hand. "Final test," he announced. "Hit all 4 targets at 1,300 yards within 90 seconds. The wind is unpredictable today. Perfect conditions for failure." Blake exchanged a nervous glance with Ortiz. The team stepped forward. Liana crossed her arms, watching silently. The timer beeped. Blake dropped into prone, checked the wind, then remembered Liana's words. "Don't fight it. Ride it." He adjusted, not to resist the gust, but to follow it. He squeezed the trigger. Ping! Center hit. Ortiz fired next. Ping! Another center hit. The other men followed one by one. Some hits were slightly off-center, but they hit. They hit. They finally hit. Only one target remained, the smallest one. The wind suddenly shifted, whipping dust into Blake's face. He blinked hard. He had 10 seconds left. He couldn't read the mirage. He couldn't feel the ground wind. This was the moment every sniper fears, the moment where instinct must replace calculation. Liana spoke softly behind him. "Trust yourself." Blake inhaled, exhaled, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew, cutting through shifting winds, and struck the steel. Ping! Perfect hit. The range erupted in shouts. Ortiz hugged Blake. The men high-fived, cheering like brothers who survived a war together. Captain Rhodes nodded proudly. "Team 9, you're ready." Liana stood still, her expression unreadable. But Blake saw the faintest smile tug her lips. "You did it," she said quietly. "No," Ortiz said. "You did." Liana shook her head. "I didn't pull those triggers." "You did. You faced your fear. That's the victory." And though she stood with them, a distance remained, an invisible wall built from her past, from the shot she regretted, from the life she walked away from. But something told them that wall was about to break. Because fate wasn't done testing her yet. The next morning, the team stood ready for deployment. Gear packed. Weapons cleaned. Faces focused. But then, sirens blared across the base. A distress call. A hostage rescue mission had escalated. A friendly unit was pinned down by an enemy sniper almost a mile away. Every shot from Allied forces missed. Every attempt to approach failed. The sniper was too skilled, too well hidden, too calm. Blake looked at Ortiz. Ortiz looked at Rhodes. Each man silently acknowledged the truth. They needed a sniper better than all of them. They needed her. Liana grabbed her old rifle without hesitation. "I'll go," she said. Rhodes shook his head. "You're not active duty." Liana stepped closer, eyes burning with a resolve deeper than regulations. "I know that terrain. I know that kind of shooter. And you know I'm the only one who can make that shot." Rhodes hesitated, then nodded. Minutes later, Liana lay atop a rocky ridge overlooking the valley.